Okay, thank you, Rob. And hi, everyone over the other side of the camera. I hope I can visualize you, but unfortunately, I can visualize my state machine, but I cannot visualize people in the other side of the camera. So let's talk about it. Before we get to my talk, just a bit about myself, so you know who I am at least. So as Rob said, I'm a senior software engineer. I'm joining Microsoft since last year. I'm also a core team member of Storefront UI, which is the e-commerce component library in Vue.js. And I'm also an author in book. You can find me everywhere on the internet at my Shavin or at my website, myshavin.com. Well, in general, I have also other title like GDE for web performance, Nuxt ambassador, media developer expert. But in short, I'm just a person who like to talk about front end and to try new stuff in web development. A fun fact about me that you can see in the pictures that I work with React almost every day. I mean, not almost every day. And even though I work with React in my day work, my title is always about Vue. So it's very interesting to say. And another fun fact that I'm a Vietnamese that live in Israel for already 10 years. So if there's any Vietnamese out there, say hi. Anyway, so let's talk about the talk. So the reason why I come to this talk is because one day I just realized that there's a lot of debate on what is the good programmer, and the daily work, the daily development process made me understand more and more that if you want to be a good developer, good programmer, you actually need to write code for human, for people to read. Well, computer will read your code, but shouldn't be the prioritized, because after all, computer read binary language like 101, 1001, and so on. But human is the one who you work with. Say your team leader, your team managers, your fellow developers, everyone need to understand what you written in the code in order to continue your work, and so on. Code is meant for human to read. And that's why we have all the high level language like C# and Java that more and more closer to normal language understanding. Another thing is, let's say, when you are on board in a new developer, and I know that you also relate to this very much, because let's say I'm also a new developer at some point into a new team, unless you are working with a company for like more than 10 years and there's nothing new about, the code base, then it's a different story. But at least one of us had to be new at some point at a team and new to the code base at some point. And one of the things in the onboarding process you will hear most is that how I'm going to get used to the code. And then the common response will be, read the code. Read the code, understand the code, and then you can work from there. You can read the code, read the documentation, read the unit test, try to get the idea of what is the code about, and then only then you can start writing. So this sentence is very correct. Code is read much more often than is written, and that's why we always have a debate of code review, whether what is good code, what is bad code. So I know we always have a debate on that, and we always feel very frustrated, and that's just the normal amount of frustration we have during the code review to define whether it's a good code or bad code. And yeah, even your own code will still can be a bad code sometimes. So that is about the developers and about how we are supposed to do. And the things about the talk is not to introduce a new things. Well, it's kind of introduce a new thing, but it's about how you should change your behavior, the thinking about, you don't jump right into the code. You don't jump right into and start typing like a robot or something, but you need to read, and reading is very essential. And another thing is, when we do a new features development of products development process, first of all, we go from the state that the idea is born, where the PM, the product managers will imagine how the feature, how the app will look. And then from that imagination, we've got into specs, which can be a long document that describe all the features, behaviors in detail. And then he'll work in parallel or one after the other. It doesn't really matter. Work together with designer to design on the scenarios or UI mockups that capture the spec as much as possible in order to hand over to the developer. And only at this point, you can start coding. And once you finish implement the features, then it will be released to the client side. And we start the whole process again by revisit the spec, adding bug fixes and adding more feature and so on. At this point, we can say that from the idea to the design phase is actually the way the human thinks, the way the human translate what they imagined from the idea into the language that someone can understand. And from the coding until the release is actually what the computer will understand. This is the part where you connect between what human thinks and what computer thinks. And that's why code is not only code, it's actually translate what you imagine, what we imagine, our features, our app, into a real things that computer can display. And that's why coding is very important, because it can reduce the gap of the human language with computer language. But the way it is, how we're going to make sure that this gap will be minimized? Well, there's a lot of ways to do it. One of the main important ways is specification or specs. And to make sure that the spec will not be long and boring, will be understandable, will be easy to see, we got into sequence diagram, which define a diagram of all the actions in a sequence order. It can be in infinity, like eating pizza, buy a pizza, asking for a menu, buy a pizza, and so on and so forth. Or a flow chart where you can see how the flow of data or a behavior go across the application. A wireframe to make sure you know how kind of the UI will look. And the higher level of specification is user flow design, where you can see the flow from the user behavior by using mockups, using like eVision, Figma, whatsoever design tool to show you if you click on this button, it will move to another one, and what will happen if you click on this picture, and so on. And this is why we have specifications. Well, and as you can see, specification here is not just documentations. It's not just a way to describe very long way, say, okay, bullet A, what to do, bullet B, what to do. It actually more than that. It's visualizing. People nowadays need to visualize in order to understand. It's very tiring to read a long document without understanding, without seeing how it works in a diagram. You see what you get. Okay, sorry, you got what you see. Anyway, so that's the specifications. So when you talk about development of new features, the specifications identify a bunch of behavior scenario. Well, mainly to answer the questions. When something happens, how do the app react? Well, how do the app behave? And this highlights the two main things in the specification. The first thing is events. Something happens equal to events. And how do the app react is actually the behaviors. For example, I'm feeling hungry. That's the event, hungry. Because I'm hungry, I'm going to react by eating pizza. And that's the behavior, or we can call it states. So, right. So state management, that's the next thing we say. What is state? State is anything about input data, input states, anything, validations, let's say, input valid, input invalid form state from one another, submit form, and so on, or just how user interact with a gallery where you can click on select an item, add something to a cart, or just a loading screen, a narrow screen. In general, state management is how we manage state, how we manage the conditions of an app. state is just a condition and behavior on an app at the given section period. This to make sure that our data flow consistently within the applications, and we can always retrieve or share the state between different components without affecting the component itself too much. Okay, but again, we talk about state management, we talk about specification, we talk about how good coding is supposed to be. But again, in modern day, not all the time we go according to the theoretically way by the book. So let's say in startups, you mostly will see that the spec is not 100% there. And sometimes the spec is half-baked, sometimes the spec is just like make user sprint, and that's it. So for us, because of these constraints, developers tend to start from something very minimal, and the slogan is just make it work. So we start with something very basic, and then we move on to release it. And once it works, we continue adding new actions, and then we add bug visit on top of it, and then we continue the interaction, we add new action, bug visit, and somehow we end up with a very, very big code component logic that at some point we need to refactor. And yep, refactor, welcome to the trauma. Or another way of development is that because we work on the kind of bottom-up approach that we said before, we end up with also mixing up logic and event and action just to make the interaction fast. Let's say, how many one of you actually think of the divide your component, divide the logic, divide the event or callback before you actually code? I guess most of us will start by saying, okay, let's just write something, let's just tweak about it, let's just make something work, right? So we can end up with having, let's say, in a component have an event handler, and then event handler actually you have also some callback, and callbacks also calling some logic, and some logic somewhere. So when you do debugging or new developer come into the team and try to understand how it works, remember how you have to click on it, go to that file, and then go to that file, and then go to that file, and at some point you kind of lost what were you in the whole process. So to solve this problem, where we come up with a lot of different architecture. One of them use reducer in React that allow you to separate between the logic and the event into something called a reducer. But the problem with that is that the event is kind of mixed up with the data inside the reducer. And then it's hard to maintain, it's also hard to read, and also hard to understand what's going on. So for that, we have state machines. And state machine is the explicit way to handle complex UI state. What exactly does that mean? So this is the sample diagram of a state machine. Let's say we have a loading state, and we have an idle state. We go to loading, we go to finish, and then we go into error, and then it go back to loading, or go back to initial state. Each of the state here will be connected to each other by event, and you can only move from one state to another with event, which that's the core concept of state machine. You have a number of finite states, and we only transition from one state to another using event, and only event was defined on the state, which tie very closely to another state. And for data handling, we do it separately using actions. So one thing you can transit from one state to another. The other things you can update the data, and these two do not need to interfere with each other. And there's a lot of state machine. The state machine concept is not new. It actually was there for quite some time, and then recently we have also state charts. There's a lot of library also already implement that. For JavaScript, we have XState, which is pretty cool state machines. The library that support Vue, React, and Svelte, very straightforward. And what I like about XState, well, I like a lot of things about it. It saved my day at work one time. Anyway, so how do we create a state machine using XState? This is an example of creating a fetch machine. You probably know the fetch, right? So the fetch starts with initial state. We call the create machines functionality, and we pass the configurations to the create machines. In that, we have initial state idle, and then we define the states of these machines. So we have idle on fetch, go to loading, which in loading is the next state. On event result, go to set. On recheck, go to failure, and so on. That's it. That's what we get for the final state. And to use it in our component, we can use by using interpret. Interpret is the functionality to actually create a service instance from the machines so that you can reuse the same machines in everywhere in your code. And you can reuse the machine in another place, and this is keep the code more clean. And then you can do transition and start, so you can add some interference code in transition from one state to another, or you don't have to. And to move from one state to another, we use the function send, and we pass the event. Let's say I want to move from idle to loading. We pass the event, I think something, loading, I guess. Okay. And for in Vue, we will use something called Uactor in the package XState Vue. Uactor is the package that will implement state charge. It used to be use service, but it's deprecate. And this Uactor is to help us to also enable management nested state machine inside state machine. Yes, you can do that, but it's not in the scope of this talk. And then you can you can get the state and the send function from Uactor as the hook, pass the service to Uactor, and and then just return the transition function, and that's it. So again, to understand more how it works, I'm going to do a small demo. I hope I have time for that. And seeing it always believe it, right? So for this demo, I'm going to create a mimicking of a wizard stepper component. Actually, I did use state machine to save my my component at work with the component, also the wizard. So this is a sample of that, but not entirely. It's not checkout process. But yeah, for the sake of it. And I'm using Vue tree. I'm using Pinia for the normal state machine state management. And I'm using 4 packages: XState, XState Vue, XState Inspect, and XState Grab. Inspect and Grab to help me to debug XState and to also auto-generate the flow for me for documentation and tutorial. So how we're going to do it? We're going to build a state machine wizard for card checking out card. And we're going to guarding the step with condition. For example, if I'm on payment, I cannot make an order until I finish confirm the payment and agree term and condition, right? So this is what we're going to implement. And lastly, we're going to see the visual flow of the wizard auto-generated. Okay, so let's start. For the sake of it, I already have XState installed, and I also went ahead and get the service. So what the service does, just get the checkout machine, and then it get the use actor, and it's interact after, and it return when I call the hook use checkout machine, it would just call the use actor with checkout service, and this way I can reuse it anywhere in the application without rewrite this code. Okay, so I have the checkout wizard, which I have the header, as you can see in the pictures, and I have a view that render the correct steps according to the state. And I have a 2 buttons. One is back and one is next. The next, we just send the event to move to the next state. And the back, we just send the previous event to move to the previous state. And so on, and then nothing different from this. And okay, so, and in the machines, for the sake of the demo, I also create some context. Context is what is data of the state machines. And in the context, I have the card to hold on the card, but I don't really use it. Shipping, address shipping method, billing, agree to terms, and payment method. We have 5 states: review, shipping, billing, and payment, and then finally success, which means when the order is confirmed, this is the final state, and from here we don't move forward, we don't move backwards. So I put it at type final, and I add, of course, every step I add a meta description for the sake of documentation later on. Okay, so let's say we need, first of all, we need to implement next. For moving next, except the last one. So on, I will pull next. And I will do target is shipping. And I don't have any action, so I don't need any action, but I do need some meta. So I'm going to move to, okay. Similarly, I'm going to next in shipping, and I'm going to target not shipping method, billing. And I'm going to also meta, and I put move to billing information. Okay. So same thing. So let's just copy it for the sake of it. And previous. Why do I have this one? I think this one is wrong. So we'll just leave it. And billing, and I'm going to move to this one. Should go to make an order. So make the order, and I'm going to target it to be success. Awesome. And here I'm going to payment, and going to payment. And this is shipping, go to shipping, and so on. And now I still need the previous. So I will put also on. I need to prevent previous. I don't need previous for the first day because and the last day, because the first day and the first day there's no previous, obviously, and the last day because you already submit the payment, so you cannot go back. So I'm going to go to review, and I'm going to meta, and thank you for complete me GitHub Copilot. Okay, so now I copy, and I'm going to go back to shipping, and I'm going to move to shipping, and similarly, I'm going to previous, billing, and meta, and description, and so on. Great. And let's take a look on our code and see how it looks. So here, when I do checkout, hopefully it works. You can see that let's say enable, you can move from one place to another. You can move from here. But again, if you go back, these are not enabled, so you need to update the field internally in the state. So let's go back to the shipping. And I have taken shipping, you have update shipping and update shipping methods. So we do update address, which is just an actions, which we're going to assign some configuration, how we're going to add, how we're going to modify the data, the context data. So here, and then we're going to, because update address is the internal actions, so internal event, so we will not set any target, but we can set a meta, which update things like this, and then select shipping method, and then again we can do actions, and only this we do the shipping methods, and of course we're going to add also some metadata for the sake of it. Okay, awesome. So this is, we finished with the shipping, and let's go to the billing. The billing, we have update phone and email. So let's say we go ahead and we go add phone, and we go actions, and we go to billing, and we do context dot billing, and then we do phone, even phone, and then we're going back here and do another one called add email, and then we do we just copy the whole thing, I think. and then so on, email. Okay. And of course, we need some metadata, so I just copy it and copy here. And then this one should be update billing font. So update billing email. And lastly, payment. So payment, they have two: payment method and agree to term and condition. That's important, right? Because we cannot do anything without payment and agree. So let's do, we have select payment method. Thank you. And we do assign actions. And again, we do this things and so on meta also. And here you go. And then the next thing is agree to terms. And this is how we define new events in a state. So on. And then we also add meta because that's how it works with us. And so cool. And now let's go to shipping to make sure that we don't do anything wrong with it. So update address, select shipping method. Okay, and then we go to payment. And then we can see here in the payment, we have two functions, agree to terms, select payment method, and is select. So now we can go ahead and send the events to upgrade to update the agree to terms whenever user click on the button. And then also here we will do and then we do payment method, and then we do target and check, make sure that it check so we can send it. And here is select, we do state dot value dot context. Well, in the template, like we can asset state dot context directly, but in the setup function, you need to do state dot value dot context in order for it to work. Okay, let's go back here and hope it will work. So let's say next, okay, and then I open here and I'm using like this, and you can also see something here that for debugging, so you can see here the context and the shipping only change, and also shipping method is standard. So if I select on Express, it will see the shipping methods it changed to saver. Okay. So next, you can have here doing something, fill information, and here we can do code choosing and then agree to term, and then we move next, and something broken. Confirmation that properly because we haven't updated that thing. I knew it. It only have to go wrong in one way or another in live coding. Okay, so when you go to shipping, here the agree to term is true, but the payment method is not updated. So let's say payment methods, because we never updated. Okay. And that's why it's easy to know, because if you cannot move to a state, there's only a few reasons why you cannot. So let's go back here, go again, standard, go back, and and then go in here, and then do and then next. And you can see here that everything is here. The problem is we don't have address. So building information. So let's go to building. I think I know why, because this one is update email and this one is at phone. Great. Now it should work. And let's just one more testing just to make sure that we didn't do anything wrong with it. So it should display here and it should display here and so on. Yes, it's here. Now, what happens if I want to actually block the advancement of the payment to confirm if user doesn't fill in the information. So for that, we're using gars in XState when condition a garden in XState. So first in the create, one second, in the create machine, it receives 2 or 3 parameters, and the second one is an options where you can put gars, and you can put like payment finalize, and then it will give you the context, and then call context, payment method, and agree to terms. And then in order to use it, we just go to the state, and we go into payment here, and then we go to the event next, and we put a condition for this one to move forward to make sure that it will be is finalized, is payment finalized. And now it should be, and meta, of course, I don't want anything is, they say must agree to term and condition. What? Yeah. And now let's go back to our code and see it is blocked. And then we go here, we go next, and so on. And then you can see the next button here is disable because we haven't choose anything. So let's select it, and then it's enable. Right? Okay, so now let's go to the main page and do the whole process. I'm adding something, I'm adding something, and then I'm going to cart, and I'm making an order. It go here, I'm going next, I'm going from here, I'm select expect saver, I'm going to move forward, I'm going to my 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then I'm going to choose paper, and I'm going to condition, and here you go. My order was already placed, and now we have all the information here. That's it. Now we implement the whole stepper just like that. And in order for us to see how we can visualize this day, we can just copy the whole thing here, and we go to the visualizer, and we paste. The visualizer is written by TypeScript, so it will give you a bunch of error. Not arrow, like ES link. Anyway, so here you can see the diagram of your state machine, that actually how your wizard will work. So you can review, you click on next, you move to shipping, you click on next, you move to billing, you click on next, you move to payment. If you click on preview, back to movement, and so on. And then if you saw that for some reason review doesn't move to here, you know why it happened, what is going on, and why it happened. And this is very cool because you can also modify the state machine here and see it's actually applied here. The nice thing about this is you can actually take this as is and go to your product managers or your team leader or your other team members and show them this is the diagram of how this component works, and they can already understand the code, how the code works without you explaining them a lot or without digging so much time into the code. Another thing is that we're talking about the graph. So I view a documentation, not documentation, steps. And yeah, of course. And then I'm going to documentation, just fix it a bit. Add email, add selection, add Chris. So this should work. Yeah. This should be add an email, I think. Yeah. Oh, so it should work. Anyway, I don't know why it works, but it's supposed to work. It will show you on the path, on the step, like what you're going to do. Everything translate into human language. So yeah, and that's it. Our demo, and you can see, ta-da, it works, and I don't really have to spend too much time thinking about it. But there's one thing I need to do, that I need to actually plan ahead how the state machine works, how many state, what the connection with the state, and what the event is should work between the state. So the question is, someone already asked me before that whether state management XState going to replace Vuejs and Pinia. The answer is no. As you can see here in the demo, I'm using Pinia for managing the cart and for managing the store. But I'm using XState for specifically for the wizard because it's explicitly UI complex component that it itself can stand alone. It doesn't really need to be in the global state. And yeah, you can combine with them on good. So before we finish, what I want to say is that good coder, meaning you need to think about other developer, how they read before you actually code. But another thing is that stop for one moment, don't start implement anything. Even though it can be nice to see your things work from the first try, you can see your thing works immediately and you have a feeling of accomplishment. But again, once you receive features or bug or requests for a new product, start planning specifications. Make sure that your specification and your diagram or your implementation diagram match to each other. And by planning, you can actually pinpoint where's the missing state that it might be the specifications, the spec didn't cover or forgot to cover. And this way save you a lot of time in coding, in bug fixing, in trying to revisit and to improve the code or refactor the code in the long term. And before also we finish, and some resource you can go to see the demo that I create with this wizard or some documentation on XState. And I really personally, I really like XState visualizer because it's really show me how my thinking laid out on the diagram, or whether something I'm missing right there. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed my talk. And why is my because I have Pinterest. And if you have any questions, feel free to talk to me and enjoy XState.